Last Sunday, sweethearts across the country cuddled up to celebrate Valentine's Day. But in Loma Linda, California, deputies say Juan Navarro delivered a fatal Valentine to his ex-girlfriend.
The 14th of February, that morning, there was a knock at the door about 8 o'clock in the morning. The family was asleep. Knock at the door. One of the children opened the door, and there it was, the defendant. They had to wake up Ignacia because she was asleep, and she basically at that point said, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here." They argued. She pulled out a restraining order. She said that you can't be here. I got this restraining order that keeps you away from me. He basically said in front of the victim's sister, "No piece of paper is going to keep me from you." At that point, she decided that she needed to take little Juanito, both their sons. He was about 4 years old at the time, to the hospital. He had a sore throat, and I think she had an earache as well. When they came out, little Juan and Ignacius, an eyewitness heard them talking. Apparently at that time, that's when the defendant had showed up, or that's when the defendant was seen. They started arguing, and the witness, Bradford Montgomery, didn't know what they were saying because it was in Spanish, but realized that she was crying and he was kind of yelling, or at least talking harshly in front of her.
Because I had a clear view of the steering column and the open door where they were. And I could see clearly as he wrestled her out of that truck and just basically dragged her down, and without looking around or anything, just right under and fired. And grabbed her by the back of the neck as he pulled her out and fired. After that, the man and the child walk across to the parking lot that we're standing in here, get in a gray car, make a U-turn out onto the street, and head down towards University.
That is not something that we deal with every day. I mean, we have witnesses that don't want to come in, don't want to testify, don't want to get involved. And this is somebody that I wish more people were like him.
At that time, I take my van, follow behind them on the University, making a left-hand turn at a pretty high rate of speed. We get all the way to Barton. I lose them, but in that time, I'm able to get some make information on the car and a partial license plate.
As far as I'm concerned, his testimony, as well as that, his testimony was the key testimony because he was, in fact, the eyewitness. He was able to take what he saw and explain it to the jury, so the jury was able to come back to Loma Linda and be there and see and watch and hear everything that Mr. Bradford did that day.
Court's in session.
We are ready to proceed with the sentencing hearing in People v. Juan Navarro. Mr. Navarro is present, being assisted by the Spanish language interpreter. Mr. Sullivan is present for Mr. Navarro, and Ms. Bevan is here for the people.
Juan, the defendant, had taken Juanito for 17 days before Juanito was finally returned to his grandmother, the defendant's mother's house. He was dropped off at the door by an unknown man. Juanito had, I think, a bag in his hands at the time, or clothes. His aunt, the defendant's sister, answered the door and was the first one to have contact with Juanito and basically said what happened.
I return here fairly quickly, and I assist the crew from the Redlands Fire Engine and the nurses from Loma Linda with placing the female victim there on the gurney, and we start trying to establish an airway and control bleeding as we get her into the emergency room.
And this really gets to me because you could imagine a 4-year-old saying this. He basically said, "My dad shot my mom, he shot her in the head, he shot her in the stomach, and there was ketchup everywhere." I mean, I can only imagine a 4-year-old saying that and what was going through his mind at that time.
Mr. Navarro, you're a criminal, an abuser. We learned later, that what you did to my sister. If I knew then, guarantee you things will be different today.
The defendant, Juan Navarro, brutally took my mother's life away on Sunday, February 14, 1993. His actions on that day dramatically changed my life forever.
We had the victim's father, who every other weekend with his other daughter, Felipa, would go down to Mexico. As I said, there was information believed that the defendant was down in Mexico, in Michoacan, I think is what it's called. He had family down there. And every weekend or every other weekend, they would go down there and just show her picture, show his picture, and try to get some information, talk to the police down there. And this was ongoing. Not until 2009 did we find out where he was and extradite him.
Now that we know in details what took place that dreadful day and how my sister spent the last minutes of her life, we're hurting even more.
Today, Mr. Navarro, you're going behind bars for a very long time. And I hope that you reflect on your despicable actions that took away our sister Ignacia.
I didn't have my mom to be there when I graduated from high school or there for my wedding.
In 2009, we get a call from the FBI task force. One of the officers, First Sergeant Basic, he's a San Bernardino PD, but he is assigned to that task force. He gives us a call and says, "Hey, I think we know where your guy is. Do you still want him?"
You, Juan Navarro, are the most horrible evil man in the world. You deserve no mercy or pity from the court, jury, or anyone on your sentencing day, which is today. You deserve to be punished to the maximum extent of the law without any privileges whatsoever. You, Juan Navarro, deserve to rot in the deepest, darkest jail cell ever built.
And Mexican police as well as the FBI went down and they contacted him down in Mexico City. They had found out that he had remarried, or he had married because he wasn't married to Ignacia. He had been raising her 2 children as well as he and her had a child together. So he basically went on his happy, merry little self and basically forgot about it. His family up here and his children up here and went on living life to the fullest.
Mr. Navarro, for the crime of first-degree murder, you are sentenced to state prison for the term of 25 years to life. Consecutive to that term, for the personal use of a weapon, the court does impose the upper term of 5 years in state prison. That is based on a myriad of factors, including but not limited to the behavior of Mr. Navarro before the crime, the stalking, if you will, of the victim, the fact that the crime was carried out in the presence of the child is also a circumstance certainly that lends a degree of callousness to the crime.
What that does for me is knowing that somehow, some way, I've given that family an opportunity to say we've closed that chapter. I guess I think about it, if it were my family and I lost someone to violence, I would want anybody that could help anyway to do what they could without being prompted or asked to, because the way I was raised, that's the right thing to do. You help people, not because there's a reward or there's an accolade. You just do it because it's the right thing. And them being able to say, you know, he's been put through the justice system, he's been tried and convicted, that's the biggest reward. And seeing and talking to the family and knowing their relief, but still with a lot of grief, words can't even describe that. Can't describe it.
It's been going on for so long, it's just overwhelming, to tell you the truth. I mean, you heard those statements. It kind of brings everything to the forefront. And it's kind of glad because this is what we do. This is what we do. We make closure for the family and make sure justice is done. And I tell you, it's this office as well as the Sheriff's Department, the FBI, everybody came together and we just put our noses to the grindstone and we did what we needed to do. And so in that sense, I feel happy and glad that we were able to do something. What a waste. She shouldn't have had to die. I'm glad the jury did the right thing. She can finally rest in peace.